You're about to listen to a true story, told live, because this is True Stories Live. Brought to you by me, Lucy Farrant, LJ Hope Productions and Norwich Arts Centre. Remember, all life is here.
My name is Phil, and as David said, there are various songs with the lyrics "Here I Go Again" in them, and I'm going to try and shoehorn some of those into my story tonight. As he also said, I've spoken at True Stories Live twice before. The last time was in February 2020, not long before the first UK lockdown. I don't know where I'm going with this story, by the way, but I sure know where I've been. Okay, right. Where I've been? Well, I had 2 lovely summers in Sheffield, working at the University of Sheffield, doing a pre-sessional course. I'm an English language teacher by trade. And I came back in between those 2 shifts in Sheffield and worked for Norfolk County Council and taught English for driving theory at Chapelfield Methodist Church. Very interesting course, I must say. But that ended as soon as the lockdown came in, and that was never going to go on after that. Subsequently, I applied for a job in Preston in Lancashire, and successfully I got that job, and where I've been is basically since 2020, I can't remember now, 2021 I think it was. Yeah, I moved up to Preston and started a job there, but I was a bit lonely, and the only kind of company that I had of an evening was an alcoholic Australian, and he would drink me literally down under the table, and it wasn't necessarily the best thing for me, although I had a good social life. In fact, all my friends, well, I can't really say I had many friends in Preston, and I would walk the lonely streets alone and a bit like a hobo or a drifter perhaps, and I'd go to work by myself, I'd go to the gym on my own, I would go to the Lake District for lovely long walks, but again on my own, and I'd even go to the pub on my own, and I started drinking a fair amount as well, which wasn't perhaps good, but got me through the days. But something to counteract the loneliness was to start doing something for my physical health, which was to do parkrun, and I started doing parkrun up in Preston. Unfortunately, the first day I chose was, I think it was July of 2020, I've lost count of the years now, 2022 maybe, 23, no 22. Anyway, it was the week that Kate Bush returned to the UK #1 with running up that hill. And in Preston, there was a 3-lap course, and sure enough, after 200 metres, you hit this really steep hill. I soon learned not to drink red wine the night before, because it was giving me a headache every time. So I got a headache the first time, I went back the next week, tried again, got a headache again, went back a third time, here I go again, trying again. There you go, got shoehorned in the title of the thing. And that was, well, I basically thought, this is no good, I can't do this, it's not for me, physical activity is not for me, I'm getting too old for this, I'm just not fit enough. But I persisted. I quit for a while, and I came back to it, and I persisted, and rolling through to the next year, I started going more regularly, and I stopped drinking the red wine the night before, and I made sure that I was sober when I did it, and I started to get a little bit better, and I started volunteering, and that helped me, and I started to make a few friends from other volunteers there as well. Anyway, just another heart in need of rescue, I thought. See, I'll put my heart out there and see if anyone can be friends with me, but it didn't really happen. And all I had, as I say, was this Australian friend who, as I say, wasn't necessarily good company, but not necessarily the best company, because, it was a drinking culture, as it were, seriously. But bringing it forward, I started to realise that my health was maybe not as it was, and I was losing weight, and I thought that was down to all the physical exercise I was doing, because I started going to the park run quite regularly, and I also had some other symptoms, but I just, as a typical man, I sort of wrote them off as something minor or something that I might have had before. But I eventually got round to, after a number of weeks, going to see a GP, and had a few tests done. They came back positive, and I was referred to Royal Preston Hospital In the meantime, I had to decide after almost 2 years whether I was going to carry on living in Preston and doing my job, and I decided, and to live in the flat that I had, because the tenancy agreement was coming up. I thought, no, maybe it's time to cut my losses and return back to my home in Norfolk, and which is what I did. And I did, but I had to go back to Preston, but not before, on this day last year, I did a park run back in Holcombe, near where I lived, for a very dear friend of ours called Barry, who sadly died in August, and I ran in his name, and it was his funeral 3 days after that. And 3 days after that, I found myself having to take a very strong laxative, because I had to have an endoscopy, which goes down that way, and obviously a colonoscopy, which goes up that way, the other way. So I had them at the same time, not literally at the same time, the same day, and then I came back. So I had to go back to Preston for that, come back to Norfolk, and then a few days later, well, I think it was the 4th of October. A couple of weeks later, I got a call from the hospital that said, we need to have a meeting because we've got the results of your colonoscopy and we need to tell you what your diagnosis is. And I started to get suspicious at this because the colonoscopy hadn't gone particularly well, and they weren't able to do the full thing. And yeah, actually it turns out that I had stage 4 bowel cancer. So a bit of a shock, I must say. And I subsequently was told to come back to Preston for more tests. I said, well, I can't. I've moved back home to Norfolk. I'm not. It's too much to travel all the way back to Preston again. So I had to get everything transferred from Preston to Norwich. And subsequently, ultimately, I was seen in Norwich by a consultant there, and I had to have an emergency stoma operation because my bowel became so blocked that I couldn't go to the toilet in the traditional way. So yeah, I had to have a stoma operation, which was successfully carried out last November, and subsequently had to embark on a course of chemotherapy starting in January of this year. Prior to that, I had a discussion or a first meeting with a consultant at Norfolk Norwich Hospital with my sister-in-law, who's in the audience tonight. And it was quite shocking because I asked him, well, what's the best case scenario, doc? And the best case scenario is maybe in 6 months, 7 months' time, you could have surgery on your liver because it has spread to your liver. And there's various tumours on there. And that would be a good result. And I said, well, what's the worst case scenario? And this was last December, 4 months to live. Well, he actually said 6 months to live, but it was 2 months since the diagnosis, 6 months from the diagnosis, and it was already 2 months gone, and then it was another month waiting for chemotherapy to start. So that was a shock. So obviously not having treatment at all. I mean, that was with no treatment, I must say. No treatment at all, 4 months. That was his estimation. But I started, obviously I chose to have treatment, and I started in January, and that has carried on all through for 6 months until the 24th of June. I haven't had any treatment since then, but I have been back to see the same consultant to see an update on my latest scans. And basically the chemo that was doing really, really well, was really working, suddenly stopped working, and the tumours the situation has kind of stabilized basically. And yeah, it was disappointing because the chemo wasn't having as big as an impact as it could have done. And I was given a choice. I was given a choice of going 3 months with more intensive treatment with additional drugs and additional this and loads and loads of side effects, which would mean I couldn't do the park run or do anything that I enjoy. I've been getting lots of side effects like neuropathy and huge rash on my face and metallic taste in my mouth, classic sort of side effects from chemo. And in the end, he said, you can either go really intensive, hit it hard for 3 months, or we can go for a sort of lighter touch option, which isn't so intensive, but it's still trying to contain the cancer. So I had this difficult decision to make. I met him on the 8th of August. I had to give a decision by the Monday, the 12th. And in the end, I decided, for the sake of quality of life, I would go for the the less intensive option and just try to contain my cancer. So I'd made up my mind. I ain't wasting no more time, I thought. And I thought, at least I'll have some quality of life. And doctors can be wrong, of course. You know, they give you sometimes the worst case scenario and the pessimistic view and a bleak picture, and it's not always that's not always the case. And I've really gone into the running now. And I really have, I actually said to him, I said, you know, at the end, I said, yeah, so, okay, how now, with this treatment, it's kind of, we're talking palliative now, we're talking sort of going to a more palliative stage where you're just containing the cancer, you're not going to try to cure the cancer. Yeah, so how long? He gave me about 9 to 12 months from August to live. You know, it could be better, but it could be worse. So what does anyone do when they're given 9 months to live? They sign up for and agree to take part in next year's London Marathon. That's what... That's what anyone would do, surely. You know, anyone of right mind would surely do that. You know, 9 months, 8, you know, it's 8 months away. You know, it's enough time to train for it. So yeah, so that's what I've been doing. I've got into I've joined a local running club. I'm doing training with them. I've got a training plan. I'm looking after my diet. I'm being very active. I'm being very, very positive. And I'm doing a half marathon, the Royal Norwich in February. I'm doing the Cambridge half marathon in March. And I'm doing the London Marathon on the 27th of April. And I'm trying to get all my family and friends to come down and be cheerleaders with pom-poms and line the route and all that sort of stuff. It might be the last thing I ever do, but what a way to go out. You know, it's better to burn out than to fade away, I say, as Neil Young said. So I'm going to hold on for the rest of my days. Okay. Maybe pray to God, if God's around, for strength to carry on. And I'll finish by saying that tomorrow I'm back at the hospital to start 12 more weeks of chemotherapy. So here I go again, you could say. On my own, down the only road I've ever known for the past 2 years. And that is my story, and thank you very much for listening. Just a little postscript to that is this book here. I've also been hanging on the promises in the songs of yesterday. That's the final reference to Whitesnake. And I'm going through this book. It's called 1001 Albums You Must Hear Before You Die. There's obviously not an option. You have a choice. You know, you must hear them before you die. So I'm taking it literally, and I'm going through roughly chronologically and listening to every album. And I think if I listen to 2 or 3 per day, it'll get me through to about February 2026, which is, optimistic. It's more than 9 months, but that's my plan. And they say, have an ambition, have a goal, have something goal-orientated, focus on something, and that hopefully will keep me alive. I'm currently about 275 in with about 735 to go. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's my other project, and yeah, positive attitude, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for listening. True Stories Live is a storytelling show and a celebration of stories brought to you by me, Lucy, LJ Hope Productions, and Norwich Arts Centre. For more information about us and what we do, check out our website, truestorieslive.co.uk. We look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now.